Welcome to Ancient Glass History, the lecture. So where does glass come from? Who discovered it? In the last pages of Book 36, Pliny introduces the subject of glass by describing the relatively recent decorative technique of tiling vaulted ceilings with glass mosaics. Then he recounts a fable-like tale about the discovery of glass, which takes place on the glistening sands along the Belus River near Mount Carmel in ancient Syria. Pliny writes, "There is a story that once a ship belonging to some traders in natural soda put in here and that they scattered along the shore to prepare a meal. Since, however, no stones suitable for supporting their cauldrons were forthcoming, they rested them on lumps of soda from their cargo. When these became heated and completely mingled with the sand on the beach, a strange translucent liquid flowed forth in streams. And this, it is said, was the origin of glass." The glass we use today is very similar. It's a soda lime glass. And the soda acts as a flux to lower the melting point of silica sand. So this is a likely probable way of the discovery of glass. As early as the 3rd millennium BC, craftsmen in Mesopotamia discovered how to cast colored glass into small objects and jewelry. The new material joined other vitreous glazes, like faience, as a less expensive substitute for rare and precious stones, such as lapis lazuli. Subsequent developments, especially the use of simple molds, enabled craftsmen to form objects entirely from glass. During this time, there were many other cultural advancements, such as Bronze Age, cuneiform writing, trading and exploration, technology improved agriculture, imperious cultures began to flourish, and Old Kingdom Egyptian pyramids were being built. The head of Amenhotep II. Ancient glass sculpture is very rare. This is one of the earliest known glass portraits. It probably shows the head of Amenhotep II, who was ruler of Egypt about 60 years before Tutankhamun. Details of the sculpture help us identify the figure. He's wearing a royal headdress and the ears are not pierced. We know King Tutankhamun, who reigned from 1341 BC to 1323 BC, and all later pharaohs had pierced ears. The craft of glassmaking may have been introduced into Egypt during Amenhotep's reign. Cast in blue glass, the sculpture is now tan in color due to its long burial. Several royal portrait heads in glass are known. They were probably made as parts of figures designed to include other materials, such as gold, ivory, and wood. Core-formed vessels. The technique of core forming, which was introduced around the middle of the 16th century BC, was used to fashion some of the first glass vessels. Core forming involves the application of glass to a removable core supported by a rod. Not all scholars agree about how this was accomplished. Some believe that the glassmaker wound trails or strands of molten glass around the core or dipped the core into molten glass. Others suggest that a paste of powdered glass was applied to the core and fused with heat. After forming, the object was removed from the rod and annealed. When the object has been annealed, the core was removed through scraping. These small vessels may have held perfume, unguents, or makeup. Between 1200 and 1100 BC, for reasons we do not fully understand, Bronze Age cultures in and around the Eastern Mediterranean collapsed. Industries making luxury goods were among the first to vanish. Few glass objects dating between 1200 and 900 BC have been found. The manufacture of glass vessels resumed in the second half of the 8th century in Phoenicia and Assyria, where many glass tablewares have been excavated at sites of palaces. Cast monochrome cups, such as the one pictured here, as well as bowls and vases, were among the earliest Iron Age glass vessels. Despite an almost total cessation of glass production during the so-called Dark Ages of Mediterranean civilization, between 1200 and 900 BC, a new generation of craftsmen reclaimed the core forming technique in the 9th century BC, and workshops began once again to manufacture small vessels to meet the demands of a rejuvenated market for luxury goods. The period between the 6th and the 4th centuries BC witnessed an expansion of the glass industry, as core forming technology spread throughout the Mediterranean. Although the technique remained largely the same, the style of vessels changed over time to satisfy the shifting tastes of patrons, which by the 6th century BC were increasingly influenced by Greek pottery. The amphoriosko, for instance, is a miniature version of the amphora, a well-known Greek pottery form used primarily for storage. This small vessel probably once held perfumed oil. The Hellenistic Age. The Hellenistic Age begins with the emergence of many Mediterranean kingdoms after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC until the rise of the Roman Empire in 31 BC. During this time, there's a resurgence in the need for luxury goods, and glass artifacts reemerged from this time period, utilizing not only core form vessels, but cast and cut vessels as well. Cast glass. Although the core forming technique was the first process to be used for the manufacture of glass vessels, several casting techniques followed shortly thereafter, with early examples from the Near East and Egypt, dating to the 15th century BC. Despite the early date of their invention, casting techniques received only limited use until the Hellenistic period, with the explosive expansion of demand for luxury goods centered around the royal courts of the new kingdoms founded by successors of Alexander the Great. The rise of cast glass to a position of greater prominence beginning in the 3rd century BC paralleled the dwindling popularity of core forming techniques, which was obsolete by the early 1st century AD. The concept of complete tableware services in glass for serving and consuming food and drink was new in the early Greek Hellenistic period. Glassmakers rose to the challenge to satisfy the new fashion with luxurious objects in clear or monochrome glass of unprecedented size, such as the bowl pictured. Though casting glass in a mold had long been part of glassmaking techniques, new advancements in casting technology allowed for the creation of large and elegantly shaped vessels to meet the new demand. Mosaic glass. Mosaic glass is one type of glassware made by fusing sections or lengths of pre-formed cane, usually featuring colorful patterns, inside a two-part mold in the shape of a desired vessel, or by sagging a disc of fused sections or lengths of cane over a former mold, seen here in the diagram. Perhaps the most famous Hellenistic mosaic glass vessels are hemispherical bowls made of polychrome canes with spiral or star designs, such as the bowl pictured above. The bowls were probably formed by fusing slices of the canes into a disc and slumping the disc over a mold. Most of these objects have rims that were fashioned by spirally twisting threads of different colors to produce a striped effect. Later, this technique was employed in Roman workshops. The earliest of the Hellenistic hemispherical bowls may have been made in the second half of the 3rd century BC, but most were produced a century later. The source of these colorful bowls is unknown. They have been found in many locations, including Greece, Italy, Egypt, and Syria. Mosaic glass bowls were a typical product of glass workshops in the Eastern Mediterranean, and this example may well have been made here. The Roman Empire. During the Roman period, beginning in 25 BC, the unification of an expansive empire created a stable environment for society to prosper and technologies to develop. The wealthy classes supported the creation of intricate cast glass forms, complete dinnerware sets that took long hours to create from cast methods, and engraved surfaces. Concurrently with the production of cast objects, a singular important invention happened, the invention of the blowpipe. The discovery of glass blowing around 50 BC in the glass workshops of the Syria-Palestine region would have worldwide applications for the production of glass for the next 2,000 years. Using thin blowpipes, likely made of metal, glassworkers could now inflate a molten gather of glass and shape it into a vessel. This development changed the way the Roman culture consumed glass forms. Blown forms used far less material as cast glass, and blown forms were far quicker to make, driving down the purchase price so that a far greater range of people from different socioeconomic areas of society could purchase it. The wide expanse of the Roman Empire created a means to supply glass ingredients to different locations, and many ancient glass furnaces were built and glass products were traded widely. This statuette of Venus is a rare example of Roman miniature sculpture in glass. It was probably cast by the lost wax technique, a method first used for casting metal. The object was modeled and waxed, encased in clay or plaster, and heated. The wax melted and was released through the vents that had been attached to the object before it was encased. The clay or plaster dried and became a mold into which molten or powdered glass was introduced through an opening in the vents where the wax melted out from. If the powdered glass was used, the mold was heated to fuse the contents. After cooling, the object was removed from the mold, annealed, and finished by cutting. The statuette is a version of Aphrodite or Knidos, a Greek life-size marble sculpture of the 3rd century BC, which was frequently copied by Roman artists. The flesh-like color of the surface is a happy accident, the result of weathering. When it was new, the object was yellowish-green. Glass mold blowing. Glass blowing technologies in the 4th century integrated with mold processes found in casting applications, with the process of mold blowing. Objects such as the figural vase you see here were made from blowing a glass gob into a fired clay multi-part mold to create intricate surfaces. The Portland vase. Another major development in the Roman era was cameo-engraved blown glass. The Portland vase is the most well-known cameo-engraved glass vessel. Cameo glass vessels were probably all made within about 2 generations, as experiments with the blowing technique, discovered in about 50 BC, was still in its infancy. Recent research suggests that the Portland vase, like the majority of cameo glass vessels, was made by the dip overlay method, whereby an elongated bubble of glass was partially dipped into a crucible, a fire-resistant container, of white glass, before the two were blown together. After cooling, the white layer was cut away to form the design. The work in making a 19th century copy proved to be incredibly painstaking, and based on this, it is believed that the Portland vase must have taken its original artisan no less than 2 years to produce. The cutting was probably performed by a skilled gem cutter. The scenes on the Portland vase have been interpreted many times with a historical or a mythological slant. It is enough to say that the subject is clearly one of love and marriage, with the mythological theme, the Ketos, or sea snake, pictured in the marine setting. It may have been made as a wedding gift. The bottom of the vase was probably broken in antiquity. It is likely that it originally ended in a point, like a fine cameo glass vessel from Pompeii. A cameo glass disc showing a pensive Priam was attached to the bottom from at least 1826, but it clearly does not belong to the vase and has been displayed separately since 1845. Here's the Morgan cup, another excellent example of cameo glass that's found in the Corning Museum of Glass collection. diatretta. This is another incredible feat of craftsmanship from Roman times, the diatretta or cage cup. This open framework on the exterior of the vessel was achieved through cutting and grinding into a thick blank of glass. Diatretta were used as hanging oil lamps or also seen as ceremonial goblets.